Folks, welcome back. I'm just filtering back in from lunch right now. Hot Shop team will be up here shortly, so bear with us. If you have any questions in the meantime, raise your hand, let me know. I'll be able to answer anything for you. And if you have questions of the folks on the Hot Shop floor when they're working, again, raise your hand, let me know. I'll see what I can do about pestering them for you. In the interim, though, we'll go ahead and just sit back and relax, and we'll wait for everybody to come back from lunch. Hey, while we're filtering back in, can we watch Meet the Artist for Mr. Janecký, please? All right, while we've got folks filtering back in for lunch, I'd like to get the Meet the Artist video for Mr. Janecký thrown up on the main screen, if we could, please.
My name is Martin Janecký. I'm from Prague, Czech Republic, and I've lived and work in Fairbanks, Alaska as well. I've been blowing glass for about 17 years now, since '93, and it's all I know, and it's all I've been doing, and yeah, I never stopped. I love it every day.
Wonderful.
For about a year and a half, I've been making these figurative work, lots of like theatrical, and it's like a clowns, but it's not clowns, you know. It's a lot of circus theme, you know, work focusing on expressions and the whole movement of the piece and stuff.
Yeah, I use the word Kafka-esque to describe your clowns. Would you think that's appropriate?
That's great.
Okay. You know, this sculpting is very technical, but then there's obviously this kind of undercurrent of emotion or confusion or angst or, you know, whatever it is. Each one's probably individual, but there's, you know, there's something under the surface rather than just the...
Yeah, it's not really happy stuff. I don't make the happy. I think there's enough happy stuff.
The bright bumblebees and all that stuff.
I'm like, you know, I'm one of the happiest glass blower on earth, so I have to like balance it out with this stuff.
Okay.
So Martin is actually one of the most humble, talented glassblowers that we've ever met. He started working on the factory floor when the age of 13, and he became a master at the factory at the age of 21. He doesn't talk about his work a lot, but among glassblowers he's considered to be one of the best, especially considering his age. We're very privileged to have him here at the Museum of Glass this week.
I brought some parts from Alaska, and we're going to be putting together some larger figures. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's just, it kind of is lens nice and
Would you want it sitting on a hand, or would you want like a strip of cracks there and a strip of cracks there?
I'm really thankful to be here and work with the team.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Museum of Glass here, coming back after lunch. Catch you guys up. This morning, Raven sat here in the center bench and worked primarily on a shark form. We got that built and put away, put it into our annealer for the evening. And it looks like we're probably going to have Mr. Martin Janecký take center stage here this afternoon, do some sculpting on a mask or two, but we'll see what transpires. So as the Hot Shop team continues to flow back in from lunch, if you have any questions, raise your hand. I'll do what I can to answer them. Otherwise, go ahead and watch the show, and I'll call out significant events as they happen. We've started our afternoon form by going into our crucible here on the right-hand side of the studio, gathering up a nice big glob of hot melty glass, and added a second layer so that we have sufficient material on the end of that rod to get started with our mask form. You noticed that Mr. Janecký has reached behind him, picked up one of those wooden tools. It's called a block, and he's using that block to shape up that glob of glass on the end of that rod. The reason that we use glass, although it may seem a bit counterintuitive, you know, putting wood next to a 1,000-degree chunk of glass, but the wood does something really wonderful for us in that it absorbs the moisture in the water and the buckets behind our artist. And when that glass gets in close proximity to that hot, when the hot glass gets in close proximity to that water, it creates a layer of steam on which our glass form rides, leaving behind a very smooth, shiny object without tool marks or marring in the surface. So the reheating chamber that Mr. Janecký is using right now is also referred to as a G hole or a glory hole. It is a large cylinder lined with fire brick, runs on forced air and natural gas, and operates at about 2,300 degrees for the duration of the time that we're in the studio. And the counterpoint to that is the crucibles that we just talked about. Couple hundred degrees less, so about 2,100 degrees, and our crucibles run 24/7. We never shut them off. Each one of those crucibles will hold approximately 1,000 pounds of molten glass, which will ultimately give us about a ton of clear glass to work with at any given time here on the floor. You notice Martin reached down there and he used that pad. That pad is exactly what it looks like. It's a big wad of newspaper folded up a number of times and then soaked in water. In much the same way that our wooden tools allow us to shape our glass objects, this paper, the papers as well allow us to add some very targeted shaping and cooling to the bubble form that is currently on the end of that pipe. Now with Martin sitting there at the center bench, letting that bubble chill for a while, it's a good indicator that we're going to add another layer of glass to the outside of that. In this particular case, we're going for another layer of clear. We gather that hot glass, come back out of that crucible, and continue to shape it up into the form that he's looking for. But before we start shaping, we're going to do what's called a strip gather, getting rid of all of the excess clear glass that's on that bubble right now, leaving behind a little bit thinner object, a little bit more fine to the touch. And then we're going to continue to shape that object up using our tools behind the bench. constantly turning our form while we sit in the bench, making sure that everything continues to turn on center. Again, folks, you notice that we're sitting here for an extended period of time in this center bench, letting that bubble chill, set up, and get a little bit more structural integrity to it before we add our next layer of glass. As I said before, letting that bubble set up is a good indicator that we're going to add another layer of glass, which is what's happening there on the right-hand side of the studio. And another strip gathered to get rid of the excess clear on the outside. All of that glass, because it is uncontaminated with additional colored dirt or other things, we can take that clear glass after it cools off, break it up into chunks, and get that back into our crucible. So we are able to use or recycle some of the glass that we use here on the floor. Unfortunately, from time to time, you'll see pieces that get trimmed off and snipped away. They'll lay there on the floor. And we have to throw those away because those have been contaminated both by additional glass colors, beeswax, and other things that the floor has got all over it. We've got Raven here in the center bench, just switched out with Martin. And continue to shape that form. Get that bubble exactly where we need it before we start moving on. So you've seen Raven take that pipe and run off to the left-hand side of the studio. We're running that pipe through a cooler right now, essentially just a water bath that the pipe rides in, cools it down, allows us to get our hand a little bit closer to the working end of that rod, and makes things a lot easier to carry around the hot shop studio floor, especially when we start adding additional pounds of glass to the outside. So we're getting ready to add color to our bubble form right now. If you were here prior to lunch, you would have seen a color cup of sorts being made and then put into our large silver over here called our garage. Currently, one of our hot shop team is sitting in this left bench, getting that color cup up to temperature. Hot glass will only stick to hot glass, so we have to get them pretty close as far as the temperature is concerned. And while he's doing that, Raven's on the right-hand side of the studio, making sure that that bubble stays at a good temperature. When they get ready to add the color to Raven's clear bubble, we'll take this color cup that Gabe is working on, set it into a cradle on the floor, or we can just present it straight away, but I think we're going to drop it on the floor. Add another layer of clear to the outside of the bubble form, which will give us a good sticky base for when we stick the bubble down inside that cup. I'm going to break that cup away. We're going to set it in that cradle on the floor. And then back to the bench for the stuff of that cup. And with that, we have added color to the outside of our bubble form. We get that cradle off the ground, move that out of the way, and continue to working the bubble form as it comes out of that rewarming station. Again, that rewarming station runs at 2,300 degrees for the duration that we're here in the studio. And turn it off every night. Then Martin has taken that form over to the marvering table where he is rolling it at a low position, making sure that the color is sealed all the way around the clear bubble underneath it, and beginning the initial process of shaping up the mask form that we're going for. So to answer that question, why is that burning? Why is it on fire? Actually, that hot glass is sitting in the residue of beeswax that is dripped on the floor. We use beeswax to coat our tools, to lubricate them so they don't make these horrible screeching sounds as the glass rolls across them. But it does leave behind some residue on the ground, and that's what you see burning there is the beeswax. So pretty much anything can be used as a glass shaping tool as long as it leaves behind the correct mark in the right location. In this particular case, you saw gravity being used to collapse that bubble, make it a little shorter and more squatty, flare it out just a little bit. All right, and with that bubble set up a little bit more, it's chilled out. It's got some of that structure built into it now that the glass is solidified a bit. Back into the crucible for another strip gather. Anytime you add glass to the outside from the crucible, we call that a gather, and what he's doing is hanging it vertically, allowing gravity to strip off the excess clear, thus the term strip gather. By adding that clear to the outside, he has protected the colored glass underneath it and added another layer, giving us more material with which to work on. And then we get back into the center bench to continue shaping that mask form. All right, Martin has moved off to the left side of the studio out into our powder booth, adding another interesting layer of color to the outside. And once he's happy with that color application, we'll get back into the rewarming chamber, melt everything back into the surface of that clear glass, and continue shaping it up. So what you're seeing there on the main screen, folks, is a sifter full of powdered glass. And as that glass, or as the bubble form turns, you tap the handle of that sifter, allowing a nice coating of powder to, excuse me, a nice coating of powder to cover the surface of that glass form. And then when we're happy with the amount of color on there, we'll get back into that rewarming chamber, revitrify all of that powdered glass, melting it back into the surface. And Ben has taken that bubble form out of the rewarming chamber straight back over to the powder booth for another application. I have it on good authority that the color of that glass is actually black, but as you see it coming through the screen, it appears purple. It's a bit early in the process to fully visualize what's going on here, but if you remember, that color cup was an amber color, and we've got black going on the outside of this bubble form. What they intend on doing is something similar to what you see here on the dais, where we've got two different colors of glass, obviously black laid over the outside of a reddish amber color. What they're going to do is, after they finish this form, they are going to sandblast very particular areas away, leaving behind the colored glass underneath the black. So that's what you're going to be able to see later on. And when I say later on, I mean in a couple of weeks after they get done with all the cold working. So on my right-hand side, your left, we have Preston Singletary sitting here underneath the lamp. He's actually going through the process of doing the artwork on the resist, or the shield that is going to prevent the sandblasting medium from eating away the glass, leaving behind a pattern in recess. It's pretty much the same process for most of this sandblasted material that you see here on the floor. Back from the powder booth to the center rewarming station. Get in nice and deep in that G-hole, get all of that powdered glass to melt into the surface of our bubble form. And then we'll get it back to the center bench, where Martin will continue to refine the shape. Out of the G-hole, back to the chair, using that pad of newspapers to continue to shape up the outside of our bubble form. Martin is using what we call the fluffy torch, obvious reasons. That fluffy torch, at this particular time, he was paying attention to the connection point between our glass form and the pipe on which it rides. That connection is called the moil, and the moil is important in that it serves just as you can see, the connection point. If that moil is to fail, and it most often does if we drop below about 1,000 degrees, then we'll lose all of our hard work. So from time to time, you'll notice the glass artists reach behind them, grab that fluffy torch, and pay attention not only to the outside of the skin, but specifically to that connection point at the end of the rod. Gabe working hard, putting that breath air into that bubble form. We're going to address that moil again with the fluffy torch, making sure we keep it above 1,000 degrees. And then we'll get back into that G-hole for another heat. What Martin is doing now, he's using a tool called the jacks to put in a jack line. That constriction just off the end of the pipe will serve as the break-off location when we get ready to move this bubble form from the blowpipe to a more solid punty. We've got to get that jack line in now while the glass closest to the pipe is still nice and spicy hot. Otherwise, once it sets up, we won't be able to get that in there. And then we get back into that 2,300 degree rewarming chamber for another heat before getting it back to the bench. Folks, you notice that Martin is really working that mask form with those cork paddles. Cork is an amazing thing for glass workers, in so much as it allows us to push and move that glass without leaving behind any of those unsightly chill marks or tool marks in the surface of our glass. In a similar way that the steam from our wooden tools allows the glass to ride on that cushion of moisture. Corks act in a similar way. And now Martin has reached behind him and picked up what we call the hot torch. The reason we call it the hot torch is because when it is open, running full, it's about 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. You contrast that with both the G-hole and the rewarming station when they max out at about 2,300 degrees. So that hot torch is just over twice the temperature. See, Martin's really going after those eye sockets with those cork paddles. We'll squeeze the temple, shaping up those cheeks. Back into the G-hole for another flash heat. So now you see Martin is working from outside the bench, while we pay a little close attention to that moil. Again, keeping it up 1,000 degrees. The application of the hot torch to the top of the head, that's a good indicator that we may be opening this form up, start sculpting from the inside, which is a very interesting process you guys will be able to see. So we go through that this afternoon. But in much the same way that we have begun, back to that rewarming station for another heat at 2,300 degrees. So again, the hole that they're creating in the crown of that mask form, the point of that hole will become very apparent soon. Basically what we're trying to do is open up the mask form so that we can sculpt from the inside out using some of those ball tools that you see behind the bench here in the center. Again, back to the 5,000 degree hot torch. Looks like we're focusing there on the eyebrows, lower part of the forehead. And then with that, back into the rewarming chamber for another all over heat. And then we'll get it back to the bench and continue shaping. All right, so Martin's gone from inside of the bench to the outside of the bench. And continue working from the outside. Again, back with that 5,000 degree hot torch, applying some very specific heat to some very specific locations. Working both sides of the mask at the same time. Deep in that mask form, pushing out the cheekbones. I'm going to run back to that rewarming chamber for another quick flash of heat. Now, folks, we got a couple of events happening at the museum this week that I'd like to tell you about. First one happens tonight. It is our third Thursday program. So every third Thursday here at the museum, we are open to the public, free, from 5 to 8 p.m. Hilltop Artists, youth artists come and demonstrate their skills here on the hot shop floor. Hilltop Artists is a local youth organization where students begin creating glass as young as 12 years old. And the Hilltop Artist was created by Dale Chihuly and Kathy Kaperick to enhance the lives of the youth through the medium of glass. Another event that will be happening this week will happen Saturday. It's our Hot Shot Party plus Night Blow with Raven Skyriver, Kelly Odell, and Martin Janecký. June 20th from 5:30 to 8 p.m. It'll be $25 for non-members, $20 for museum members. And you can get your tickets at the museumofglass.org. Please join the Museum of Glass for an exclusive night blow and party in the hot shop with Raven Skyriver, Kelly Odell, and Martin Janecký, where they will make one of Skyriver's signature whale forms. We'll feature the design work of Joe David and sandblasting by Preston Singletary. This after-hours event is a chance to see a one-of-a-kind statement piece being created by this collective. Sliced sandwiches will be open throughout the evening, serving drinks and dinner. Attendees will receive their first drink on the museum. Grab a beer and join us in the hot shop. And as a reminder, it is a 21-plus event. So back to the center bench as we continue to shape our mask form. Again, paying attention with that 5,000-degree hot torch. Keeping our moil above 1,000 degrees so it doesn't crack. Let's get it back into that G-hole for another nice heat. Folks, in addition to what we have going on here at the center bench, on the right-hand side of the studio, we've got Raven Skyriver working in that bench over there, making some sculptural elements for an eagle's head that will be forthcoming in the next couple of days. But if we can get some good shots of what's going on over there, we'll talk through that process as well. But in the interim, we're still here at the center bench with Ben, Martin, Preston, and the rest of the team. While Martin continues to shape up that mask form in the center bench, over here on the right, we've got Raven Skyriver getting ready to accept a bit of color on the end of his blow rod. Kelly is now presenting him with a bit of color. He's going to use those shears to snip it off, give it a quick little pat, and then we'll get it back into the rewarming chamber so we can get it onto the marvering table and roll that color all the way down and around our clear bubble. So back into the rewarming chamber real quick. Here at the center bench, Martin's continuing to push that nose out. And back to the G hole for another flash. See Raven here on the right-hand side rolling that color back and forth across the marvering table where he gets back to the G hole. Gets a little bit more heat energy into the color on the outside of that overlay. And he'll get it back to the table and continue rolling it up, making sure that all of that clear bubble has been covered by the color that they just added. And there at the center bench, you're going to continue to watch that face form go back and forth to the rewarming chamber, back to the bench. It's a constant dance just to keep the heat in the right location and keep that moil above the cracking point. So we'll continue to let Martin work. Over here on the right, Raven has gone back into the crucible to gather another layer of molten glass on the outside of that bubble he just rolled up. And using a form of a strip gather, he adds that layer of clear glass to the outside of the color and strips away all the excess and continues to shape up that bubble form. Now here back in our center bench, Martin's continuing to work that mask form all the way deep in that G hole, and then back to the bench for more sculpting. Again, folks, even with all the sculpting that's going on in the head, we have one of our artists here paying attention to that moil, making sure that it stays above that 1,000-degree threshold, keeping it from cracking, and ultimately causing us to lose all of our work. And then again with that 5,000-degree hot torch working around that nose area of our mask form. The center bench is going back into that rewarming chamber. Quick heat. Here on the right-hand side, we've got Raven going into the crucible, adding a little bit of glass to the outside of the form on which he's working. At the center bench, we're going to continue to make trips back and forth to that rewarming chamber with the addition of that heat coming out of the hot torch. You got a similar thing happening here in the right-hand bench with Raven Skyriver, just on a smaller scale. But you see the theme, going to the bench, back to the hole, to the bench, to the hole, to the bench, to the hole, over and over and over again. All right, continuing on. Martin's still hard at work here in the center bench. On the right-hand side of the studio, we've got Raven Skyriver going to be working on an eagle head form. Finished the eyeballs. He finished the beak not too long ago. We're going to get into the head form. And if everything goes according to how I've been told, we should see this head form be used later on in the week, either tomorrow or Saturday, as an addition to one of the masks that the team is making on the floor this week. As a reminder, folks, today is the third Thursday of the month, and every third Thursday here at the museum, we're open free to the public from 5 to 8 p.m. Hilltop artists, youth artists will come tonight and demonstrate their skills here on the hot shop floor. Hilltop Artists is a local youth organization where students begin creating glass as young as 12 years old. Hilltop Artists was created by Dale Chihuly and Kathleen Kaepernick to enhance the lives of the youth through the medium of glass. This Saturday, June 20th, Museum of Glass will be putting on a hot shop party and night blow with Raven Skyriver, Kelly Odell, and Martin Janecký. It'll run from 5:30 to 8 p.m. Tickets are $25 for non-members, $20 for museum members, and you can get your tickets at themuseumofglass.org. Join the Museum of Glass for an exclusive night blow and party in the hot shop with Raven Skyriver, Kelly Odell, and Martin Janecký, where they will make one of Skyriver's signature whale forms, featuring design work from Joe David and sandblasting by Preston Singletary. This after-hours event is a chance to see a one-of-a-kind statement piece created by this collective. Sliced sandwiches will be open throughout the evening, serving drinks and dinner. Attendees will receive their first drink on the Museum of Glass, so grab a beer and join us in the hot shop. We'll turn down the lights and turn up the heat. This event is 21 and older only. Remember, folks, we've got to keep that connection point between our blowpipe and our form above 1,000 degrees, or it'll crack and fall away. That's why you see Gabe sitting there at the center bench with that fluffy torch, paying attention to the moil, keeping that thing from cracking and losing all of our hard work. On the left-hand side of the studio, we got Kelly moil deep into the heat reheating chamber as she and Raven Skyriver continue to shape up this eagle's head form that they're working on for later this week. Over on the right-hand side of the studio, you see that Kelly has gone into that crucible for a gather of hot glass. And now she's using the gravity to pull all of the excess clear glass off the outside of that bubble. That process is called a strip gather. You gather the glass and then you strip the excess. And with that, going back off to the left-hand side of the studio, looks like they're going to be doing a powder application there in the color booth. But before we get to that point, Kelly's going to stop at the pipe cooler, essentially just a water bath to run that pipe through, so it makes it easier for us to carry our hot objects around the hot shop studio. Over in the powder booth, we have a different type of color application going on. What you'll see, if we can get an image there, is we've got a sifter full of powdered glass, and with a light tapping motion as we rotate our bubble form underneath it, sprinkles a nice coating of powdered glass on the outside, sticks to it very lightly. Then we get it into our rewarming chamber to melt or revitrify all of that glass, so it can bond and fuse to the surface of the bubble on which we're already working. And with that white powdered glass melted into the surface of our bubble form, Kelly's gone back to the powder booth one more time for another application. You'll see her come back to that rewarming chamber to again vitrify that glass melted into the surface of our bubble form. Here at the center bench, Martin's continuing to work diligently on that mask form. Over on the left-hand side of the studio, we got Kelly Odell in the bench, working with a tool called the jacks. She's creating a constriction of that bubble form. You trim away that excess, leave that there on the floor. And then back into that rewarming chamber. Get a little bit more heat energy into our form. Center bench, pretty much the same thing going on. Paying close attention to that moil, keeping it above the 1,000-degree mark so it doesn't crack. And then back into that rewarming chamber. Again, that rewarming chamber runs at 2,300 degrees, but only for the duration of the time that we're here in the studio. We turn it off when we go home at night. The crucibles, however, we've got 2 of them here on the hot shop floor. Each of our crucibles holds 1,000 pounds of glass at a temperature of about 2,100 degrees, and that runs 24/7. So over on the left-hand side, Kelly sat in the bench, let that bubble set up nice and solid. It's a good indicator that we're going to go back in and get another layer of hot glass on the top of what she's already working. Now that she's moved back over to the right-hand side of the studio, Raven's joined her. And when she feels that that bubble form that she's got on the end of her pipe is set up enough, we'll go back into the crucible, gather another layer of clear hot glass on the outside of it, and continue shaping up that eagle's head form. Center bench, Ben is coming back to Martin for some more sculptural elements. And over on the right-hand side, Kelly's getting ready to take that dip back into the crucible for another gather of clear glass. All right, Kelly's gone into that crucible and is now completing that strip gather, letting all of the excess clear glass flow off the end of that bubble form. And then immediately turns her attention over to the marburing table, where she's further able to strip more of that glass off the outside by dragging it backwards ever so slightly while she rolls from side to side. As that's going on, Ben has gotten back to the center bench, continue with that mask form. And then on the right side, Kelly has gone back into the rewarming chamber to make sure that that gather of glass she just put on the outside of her bubble form holds true. Kelly is taking that bubble form back over to the left-hand side of the studio for one more powder application in that powder booth. I'm going to stop off at the rewarming chamber on her way over. Make sure that that bubble form is up to temperature. And then when she's ready, she'll run around the corner and we'll add that powder to the outside of the bubble form. All right, that mask form has come back to the center bench for a little bit more sculpting. Over on the left-hand side, Kelly has completed that powder application and has returned to the rewarming chamber to vitrify that glass, melt it into the surface of the clear that she just picked up. And then we'll get back over to our bench and start sculpting up the head form of the eagle's head. Meanwhile, here at the center bench, Mr. Janecký's gone back into the rewarming chamber and get him back to the bench for some more sculpting. On the right-hand side of the studio, we've got not Preston, Raven Skyriver sitting in the bench, currently working on a bubble form that's going to be sculpted into the shape of an eagle's head. He's using a tool called the papers. They are exactly that. It's a section of newspaper that's been folded up about 7 to 9 times and soaked in water. Those papers do something special for us, especially because they're soaked in water. Much like the wooden tools that we have in the buckets behind our artists, the water that has been absorbed into those papers, when it gets close to the hot glass, it turns into a cushion of steam and allows our glass form to ride across that cushion of steam, which leaves behind no marks in the surface, leaving us that glassy, shiny finish that we're so used to seeing. Now, Raven has decided to use another technique to impart a little bit more texture to that eagle's head form. You see him from time to time roll it back and forth across the metal steps that we have here in the studio. And then we get back here to the bench, using those papers again, cool off that bubble in a very specific location. Center bench, you notice that Martin is using the blast furnace properties of that warming chamber to focus as much energy and meet as much thermal energy towards the crown of the head form as possible. Once he's happy with the amount of heat imparted to his form, he'll get that back to the bench for more sculpting. Over here on the right-hand side, Raven is continuing to work on that eagle's head form. Martin's using that 5,000 degree hot torch. Focus some thermal energy right around the opening in that head form. At the center bench, Martin is using those cork paddles to manipulate the glass. This cork is nice in that it doesn't leave behind any unsightly marks in the surface of our forms. So he's able to push all of that excess glass around without leaving behind anything unsightly. All right, here at the center bench, Martin has used those diamond shears to cut away all the excess on the top of the crown of that mask form. Using the hot torch, gets it nice and liquidy, nice and soft, joins it all back up. And then they'll bend it over, polish it off, and make it like it never even happened. On the right-hand side, we have Raven continuing to work on that eagle's head form. So as I said earlier, anything can be used as a glass shaping tool. You saw right there Martin hang and swing that mask form, using the force of gravity to elongate it and draw it out to be a little bit longer. So here at the center bench, looks like we're putting some refinements to that mask form. Our last few preparations before we get ready to knock that thing off and put it away for the evening. Over on the right-hand side, we've got Raven and Kelly working on that eagle's head form still. Continue to add those sculptural elements to it. And much like the center bench, back and forth between the bench and the rewarming station. So as the team here in the center bench goes back and forth between that rewarming station and the bench itself, over on the left-hand side, Martin Janecký is getting ready to build a punty. This is another pipe that will have some glass on the end. It will serve as the connection to our glass form as we break it away from the blowpipe on which it currently sits. Doing so will give us access to the neck area. We can open that up a little bit and work on the mouth and teeth. Continuing to refine that mask form while Raven and Kelly on the right-hand side of the studio continue working that eagle's head. So lots going on. Here on the right-hand side, we got Kelly and Raven continuing to work on that eagle's head form. Center bench, we've got Gabe and Ben in a holding pattern, making sure that that mask form is ready to go when our left bench is done creating this blow punting. We'll soon be transferring this mask form at the center bench onto another pipe. That other pipe will allow us access to the neck so that we can continue to sculpt this mask form from the inside. Putting the final touches on the mask with a mouth, teeth, chin, etc. Again, folks, on the left-hand side of the studio, we've got Mr. Janecký working on that blow punty that will be the transfer rod for which this mask form will be transferred to. And over here on the right-hand side, Raven continues to work with Kelly, adding those sculptural elements to this eagle's head. All right, folks, hot glass sticks to hot glass. You can see what they were up to, getting those torches and everything ready, adding this blow punty to the top of this mask form. And as Martin becomes more confident in the join there at the top, we'll prep the other side. In this case, we're using the big fluffy torch there on that connection point called the moil. A little water behind him, a couple of drops right there on the neck, and with a quick tap, we leave that behind in Martin's capable hands, back into the rewarming chamber. Now, if you remember, we just moved that mask form from one pipe to the other. Currently, the coldest place on that mask form is the chin, where the original pipe was attached. And now we're back into that rewarming chamber to impart a lot of that heat energy down into the chin and mouth area so we can continue to sculpt those design elements up. So you notice Martin has placed that mask form all the way into the rewarming chamber and then has pulled it back using the blast furnace properties to focus the thermal energy right at the very base of that mask form. When you get back to the bench, you can see that temperature differential. In our right-hand bench, Raven has gone to our big silver box on the left-hand side of the studio we call the garage, and has retrieved a blowpipe with a eagle's beak form on it. Looks like they're getting ready to attach the two. I'm going to make sure that the temperatures of both items are up and equal. That way the glass will stick together. So with the application of that hot torch and a couple of trips back and forth to the rewarming station, we should have everything where it needs to be to make that joint successful. Back in the center bench, see more of the same. Really adding that thermal energy with that hot torch, 5,000 degrees. Down into the neck area. And then back into the rewarming chamber. Again, 2,300 degrees of heat coming out of that thing. Now that rewarming chamber, or the G-hole as it's called, runs only while we're here in the studio. So we'll only see that for about 8 hours a day. But on either side of the hot shop, we have crucibles. Each one of those crucibles holds about 1,000 pounds of glass in a liquid state, so 2,100 degrees, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We never shut them off. It runs on forced air and natural gas. On the right-hand side, Raven and Kelly are really working to make sure that those glass pieces are the same temperature so that when they bring them together, like they are now, they will stick. With the beak added to that eagle's head form, make sure we get it back into the rewarming station. Heat up that beak a little bit more so that we can draw it out and have that characteristic hook bill that all the eagles have. Folks, as we continue the process of adding these sculptural design elements to both of the forms in either of our tables, I'd like to tell you about an event that we're putting on here this evening. Every third Thursday here at the museum, we're open free to the public from 5 to 8 p.m. The Hilltop youth artists will come and demonstrate their skills on the hot shop floor. Hilltop Artists is a local youth organization where students begin creating glass as young as 12 years old. Hilltop was created by Dale Chihuly and Kathy Kaparick to enhance the lives of youth through the medium of glass. Event I'd like to bring your attention to is a hot shop party plus night blow with Raven Skyriver, Kelly Odell, and Martin Janecký. That'll be happening this Saturday, June 20th from 5:30 to 8 p.m. $25 tickets for non-members, $20 for museum members, and you can get your tickets at museumofglass.org. Join the Museum of Glass for an exclusive night blow and party in the hot shop with Raven Skyriver, Kelly Odell, and Martin Janecký, where they will make one of Skyriver's signature whale forms, featuring design work by Joe David and sandblasting by Preston Singletary. This after-hours event is a chance to see a one-of-a-kind statement piece being created by this collective. Sliced sandwiches will be open throughout the evening, serving drinks and dinner. Attendees will receive their first drink on the museum, so grab a beer and join us in the hot shop. This event is for those 21 and older only. So as the center bench continues to refine that mask form, here on the right-hand side, Raven has added the eagle's eyes to the head form, refining those sculptural elements. And with that, we'll get back into the rewarming chamber for another overall heat. Here at the center bench, we're going to continue to work on the nose portion of that mask form. Here on the right-hand side, Raven's getting ready to knock this eagle's head form away from the blowpipe on which it sits and attach it to Sarah's punty rod, which she's attaching right now. Once Raven is happy with the join at the top, he's going to reach behind him, grab a few drops of water from the buckets behind him, and apply those drops of water to the constriction point off the end of his blowpipe. And then with a quick tap of his tool, those surface cracks created by the water will go all the way through that constriction point, leaving that head form in Sarah's capable hands. They'll get it back into the rewarming chamber for another overall heat. Here at the center bench, Martin continues to work on the nose portion of that mask form. All right, on the right-hand side, here comes the water drops. A little bit more. A quick tap. Nope. While the center bench continues to sculpt away, over here on the right-hand side, we're going to try the punty transfer again. Sarah's gone back into the crucible, gotten a big gather of clear hot glass. Just going to shape it up on that marvering table and then bring it back here to the right-hand bench, present it to Raven. We'll then attach it to the crown of this eagle's head form. And as long as I don't jinx them again, it'll go off without a hitch this time. Here comes Sarah with that punty. Gonna add a little bit of cold air to solidify that join. And then when Raven's happy with the way it's connected, he'll reach behind him for those water drops. Again, there at the neck portion of that head form. And let's see if we can tap this thing away this time. There we go. All right. Back into the rewarming chamber, 2,300 degrees. Impart a lot of that heat energy down into the neck of that eagle's head. And then back to the bench to flare it out and continue working it. The center bench, we continue to work on the mouth and teeth of this mask form.